Hello friends and frenemies, thanks for joining me on this video. This is a random video because my channel used to be called Spanish at Home with Paola, which I stopped because I lost track of what I was trying to accomplish. Part of it was because I wanted to include my children in it, and then I just didn't feel good filming them learning Spanish. But I'm using my same channel just for the sake of me keeping track of my goal this year, specifically speaking in regards to personal finance, our budgeting goal for the year. I am doing 12 videos, so every month basically is me keeping track of my budget. And so this first video is gonna be 5 lessons that I learned from my first month of my new budget setup that I've done, and also because I'm handling cash and card, and so I'm doing a cash and card budget. So that's something new for me because I'm used to doing everything with card. So I want to share them with, well, for myself, honestly, so at the end of the year I can reflect back on these videos and be like, wow, I actually learned something throughout this year. And but also so that if anybody watches, hopefully you learn something as well as I have this past month. Anyways, let's dive right into it, and thanks for joining. The number one thing I learned in the last month of January, this past month, is that you have to be very intentional about your expenses and what you are doing. You have to be very money conscious. Now, the way that I'm doing my budget is, so I'm paying all my bills online because that is how we pay bills nowadays. Paying our mortgage online, water, electricity, all that stuff is all online. And so the way I set up my budget is also a little weird. Maybe I should do a video on that alone because that's a little confusing. But basically, I know what my expenses are for the month of January when I do my budget. Most people do so I'm doing, I think it's called like zero out budgeting. I think that's what it's called. But anyway, it's a type of budget where you basically have nothing left over at the end of the month. The way I did that, I was able to do it because I had some savings, and so it like helped me kind of get ahead a little bit. But what we basically did for January was that we took our income from December and we didn't spend it, and we used that for the budget in January. So we knew how much money we were gonna have in January, and we knew what our bills were gonna be because you always get the bill the month before. So that was really helpful for me because every time I do a budget, I'm always like running around trying to figure out what I'm doing, and then I go over and then I go under, and then I don't know where my money goes. So I found that doing that was gonna be very helpful. But again, we had savings, so we were able to do that and pull from our savings, pay some of our expenses. And so I like doing that because even though I'm doing a zero out budget, my bank is not empty. I always have a fear that I'm gonna get a random charge and then I'm not gonna have any money if I really zero out my bank every month. But I always have money in it because when we get paid in January for our February budget, I'm not spending that money. But if something was to happen where I got a random charge, then I would have the money for it and I can fix it rather than having an empty bank account charge. No, so hopefully that makes sense. I should do a video on how I set up my budget so it makes maybe a little more sense. But anyway, that's kind of what we're doing. Now, the reason why I say you have to be very intentional and conscious about it is because the money that you're using, and so again, our fixed expenses is really easy. But we're also, I guess, part 2 of our budget. So because we're using the month before's income to do the following month's budget, I already know exactly what my fixed expenses are. So that means I know exactly how much money I have to spend the rest of the month. I know how much money I have for me now. I know how much money I have for household expenses, for whatever variable for gas, whatever variable expense comes. Okay, so what I'm doing is, so for my cash, so gas, if I have to put gas, I use card for that, but I know that I have 150 or whatever the amount is between me and my husband for the whole month. So we keep track weekly on that. For the cash expenses for the month, I have like envelopes, so I have literal real envelopes that I made, and I just use contact paper to kind of laminate them because I don't have a laminator, and I'm cheap. It's funny because when I was making this, setting up my budget, I was looking up on Amazon envelopes. I was looking on Amazon like journals for budgeting, and basically I was finding ways to spend more money to save more money. And I found that to be super contradictory. So again, you having to be so intentional about expenses and like being so conscious about where we're putting our money, I think is really hard because we think I need X and Y to accomplish X and Y thing. And I made it a goal that I wasn't gonna spend any money on it. And if I did, it was gonna be just like a couple dollars max type of thing. So anyway, what I ended up doing is I actually went to Dollar Tree and I bought envelopes, so it was $125. And I think I got like 50 or something, which I needed for another thing anyway. So it wasn't like I was spending money in an unnecessary manner. And so I had contact paper from a few years ago that I bought for like a project for one of my kids. And then I have these little dots, the ones that like connect. And I also had these little cards, flashcards, I think is what they're called. So I actually used my flashcards that I already had from years ago to do the expense item. So it just has like the date, the description of what I'm doing, whether it's a deposit, a withdrawal, or what it's for, the amount I'm adding or taking away, and then the balance, so that I always know how much money is in my envelope. And so again, this cost me like cents to make. I was looking up on Amazon like cash envelopes, and they were $6, $10, $20. It just, the prices range. And they were all super cute and you could decorate them as you wished. I don't care. I'm not someone who needs to have all the flashy things or things need to look overly pretty. And so for me personally, this is just practical and that's all I need, compared to how maybe other people would be, where some people want color, which you can add color to this if you have Sharpie. I just do not particularly care. So anyways, the second lesson I learned, that I have learned so far from doing this mixed budget of cash and card, is that it takes actual planning and diligence to handle cash and card transactions. I say that because, as I mentioned, I can't just go out and be like, oh, I'm gonna buy this. I really need to mean it. When I went to Costco in the month, I bought things I actually didn't have at home, things we actually needed, but I realized I didn't need a gigantic bottle of Tylenol. We were out of Tylenol, but I didn't need to go to Costco to buy it. I could have just gone to the grocery store or Walmart and spend like, what, $5, $6 as opposed to 15 or 20. I can't remember the cost for the Tylenol, but it was already there, and I thought, oh, great. But again, I didn't plan myself well enough. And so, granted, I kept my budget, but I was forced to do it. And I had to really plan the rest of my January when I had zero household money left over. And so I had to be very intentional. Now, handling cash and card, like I said, can be tricky, because for me, it took me probably the whole month of December to really nail the type of budget that would work for me and the type of setup. Right now, again, in the last month at least, it has worked really well. The envelopes that I have set up and and what I have set up for card as well. So far, it has been really good. We keep track every week of our expenses so that I know how much I have left over. You could do this with card. You don't need to do cash for it. I just have found that for me, spending $50 and then seeing what I have left over with my own eyes, and it's like tangible, it has been really eye-opening, and it really makes me plan what I want to do with my money more than simply just shopping. The third lesson I've learned is that cash is really inconvenient. Handling cash, I feel like you have to count money, it's dirty, you have to, which I guess people have handled money for a long time, so I just thought, I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm handling money, my hands feel dirty. But it's just inconvenient. When I went out with my friends, I thought I brought enough money, which I really did, because it ended up working out and I actually didn't spend the money I thought I would spend. So it worked out really well, but I realized how inconvenient it was that I only had X amount of money at hand. And so I was very quick my mind went immediately to breaking my budget of what I had told myself I would spend that night because I had card. So yes, it is inconvenient, but I can see why people recommend cash, like if you're trying to keep a budget, because cash really makes you think about where you're putting your money. You see it leave your hands so much faster, and it is tangible. You touch it. If you have $100, you know what that looks like and what it feels like. And if you spend 80 of that 100, you can tell really quickly what $20 looks like. I think when you have a card, there's like no emotional attachment to it. I feel like now I'm more conscious, so I like want to spend less money because I see how quickly it vanishes. And the fourth lesson I learned is that it holds you accountable. If you only have $100 to spend and you spent 100, you can't spend 101 or 105 if you only have 100. Which again, that's where I'm trying to balance the conscious side of me of, well, I really need to keep a card with me on hand at all times just in case of an emergency, versus just because I have this card doesn't mean I have the money. So like balancing that mentality is really hard, but for me, at least for the whole month of January, it worked really well knowing that I had cash. Also having envelopes. You might wonder, do you just carry envelopes with you? I don't. I personally don't really have a lot of cash on me. I think I have in my car maybe $20 in case of something, but overall, I don't just have cash on hand. The reason for that is because it holds me from spending money. So like I said earlier, you have to be intentional about it. It makes me be very intentional. Like I don't just wake up, go out and randomly show up at Costco without planning me to I can't just go to the store and buy shoes if I didn't bring the money with me. So in that sense, it also holds me accountable because I have to like go to my little envelope, see how much money I have to spend, and then I kind of go from there and say, okay, so this is my budget for whatever I'm about to buy right now. And the last thing I learned is that you actually can keep a budget. And by you, I mean me. I, for the first time, can say that my budget came out beautiful for January. The reason for that is we ended up having, and I could see it because all my money had a place that it was supposed to go. I ended up having cash left over for gas for the following month. I didn't have enough for household expenses, but then it meant that for February, I had more money to budget with. We are low-income people. My husband's going to school. I work, but I make very, very little money because I only work very little hours. So we have a very, very tight budget. And I'll make a video and just kind of break that down a little bit more for us in the future. But because we have such a tight budget, I can't just, like my budget doesn't have like hair or nails or clothing. Like we have sinking funds, and so we kind of budget, okay, for clothes for the whole year, this is what we get. And if we have built that sinking fund a little bit, then that's how much money we have. And so we kind of plan it, but because I had extra money left over, I was able to add that extra $60 and put them in our budget for either our sinking funds, which sinking funds basically is just, well, in my particular case, I'll actually show you. So I have 4 cash sinking funds. So I have family activities, family personal, car maintenance, and home maintenance. So basically, these 4 sinking funds are cash that I'm handling, and I have a goal that I want to reach for the year. But I'm using this money like for home maintenance. So if we want to plant a garden in the spring, then I know how much money I have for that. So that's kind of what we're using it for. But anyways, I was able, because we had that extra like 60, so that's just one example, that extra $60 for our gas money, I used that extra $60 and put it into a sinking fund the following month, because I already had, and it also helped me know, okay, if I only spend $90 on gas, then it means, was it 90? It was something like that. If I only spent that much, then I lowered my budget for the next month of February, just so that I had more money to put into our sinking funds for the year, so that I knew kind of where to save it, I guess. And the reason why I really liked putting my money, like telling my money exactly where to go, is because it kind of helped me better see where I'm spending my money. Like on home expenses, I use every penny in there without a doubt. And I'm gonna be very conscious in February to see if I can save some. I think we did 124, I think is what my budget allowed for February for home expenses. I'm pretty sure. And that includes like if you need toilet paper, diapers, wipes, anything like that, cleaning products. So stuff like that is under that expense. But anyways, I was able to kind of better see, oh, if I have cash, this is kind of where it's going. Now, for me, I kind of was wondering, I wonder if I could easily just like use card for this. And I realized that the reason why this works really well is because I'm more hesitant to spend money, because I see it go away. So I'm getting like almost stingy about it. Now, it doesn't mean I don't spend money. I give myself room for that, because I don't want to make a budget that's gonna be unrealistic either. Hence why, because I knew that home expense was a big one, I didn't just do like $40. I did 125 for January and then 124. This, which is a random number, but in my budget it makes sense, so I'm sticking with it. But anyway, so yeah, so for this month, it was the month of January. It was definitely a learning curve. There was a lot of cash handling that I had to do that at first it was kind of intimidating, because I haven't handled cash in years, but I actually like it. So far, it has been really good. I haven't overspent, which is a huge deal for me. And we don't spend a ton of money compared to your average American, because we really don't have a lot of money to spend to begin with. But even with the little money we make, we still were able to actually have money left over, which is a huge deal for me. So I'm like very proud. So that's also part of why I'm really excited to like do these videos, because it's gonna be a nice reflection for me at the end of the year to look back on these videos and remember, this is like my journey for the past year when it comes to money. And I always talk about it. I'm like, if you know me, I love talking about budgeting and personal finance, which is funny because I don't have a lot of money to begin with. But maybe that's why I do it so much, because I'm hoping that when we have more money, we won't just go crazy because we're seeing money. We're actually learning the discipline and the art of managing money now, so that when we do have more money in our budget, we can be disciplined and we can actually work on our financial goals. So that's kind of part of why I'm excited to do this video, so I can kind of look back and reflect on my journey. But if anybody watches this, hopefully you learned something today. If not, thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll see you at the end of February for my next video.